Nadia gave away her last $20 to a stranger, and she didn't tell anyone about it. Not because she wanted credit later. Not because she thought something good would come back to her. She did it because the woman in front of her looked like she hadn't eaten since Tuesday, and Nadia had $20. And that felt like enough of a reason. She slipped the bill into the old woman's hand quietly, the way you'd pass a note in class, fast sideways, hoping nobody made a big deal of it. Then she went back to folding cashmere sweaters at the Harlow and Reed display and didn't think about it again. That was a Thursday morning in late October, and by Friday afternoon, Nadia had lost her job. She just didn't know yet that she'd also found her life. Harlow and Reed was the kind of boutique hotel gift shop that felt more like a punishment than a retail experience. Everything in it cost more than it should. A candle for $92. A ceramic mug with no handle for $45. A scarf that looked hand-knitted but was made in Portugal, priced at $320, which Nadia had once accidentally mentioned out loud to a customer, in a tone that was, in hindsight, slightly too honest. She had worked there for 14 months. She knew the inventory better than anyone, could identify the regulars by their footsteps on the marble lobby floor, and had learned to fold a turtleneck in 7 seconds flat. She wasn't the most polished person on the floor. She laughed too easily and her ponytail was never quite perfect, but she was good at her job in a way that actually mattered. She made people feel comfortable. She remembered names. She paid attention. The other staff had a different way of measuring worth. Priya was the senior sales associate, and she had the energy of someone who had decided very early in life that the appearance of competence was more important than competence itself. She wore her lanyard like a medal. She called the hotel guests clientele, in a voice that was just a little too loud. Marcus was newer than Nadia, but had aligned himself with Priya so efficiently that he now behaved as though he outranked everyone. He had a habit of straightening things that were already straight. Then there was Bridget, the floor manager, a woman in her mid-50s with reading glasses she never actually used for reading, who had been slowly building a small kingdom of performance metrics, and had made Nadia feel, on more than one occasion, like a liability. Nadia had learned to navigate around all of them. She kept her head down. She was good to the customers. She counted the days to her annual review, which was supposed to come with a raise she very much needed. She hadn't expected the old woman to walk in on a Thursday. It was just past 11, when the lobby doors opened and let in a cold rush of November air, along with someone who clearly hadn't come for the $92 candle. She was small. Not in the way that made you think frail, but in the way that made you think she'd been carrying something heavy for a long time and had gotten used to it. Her coat was a dull olive green, the kind that had once been a real color and had been washed into neutrality. She wore white sneakers that were clean, but had seen several winters. Her hair was pulled back simply, a few silver strands loose around her face. She moved slowly through the entrance, looking around with a kind of quiet attentiveness, like someone reading a room they'd been in a long time ago, and trying to remember where everything used to be. Priya clocked her immediately. Nadia watched Priya's expression go through 3 distinct phases in about 4 seconds. Curiosity, assessment, dismissal. She leaned toward Marcus and said something under her breath. Marcus glanced at the woman and covered a small laugh with his hand. Nadia looked back at the cashmere display. The old woman made her way slowly toward a glass case near the center of the room. The one with the sterling silver jewelry, the watches, the things that were behind glass because they cost enough to change someone's month. She stood in front of it and just looked, one hand resting on the edge of the case. "Can I help you?" Priya called from across the room. She didn't move toward her. She just called it, the way you'd call across a parking lot. The woman looked up. "I'm fine, thank you." "These pieces start at 400, Priya added, and she said it pleasantly, the way you say something pleasant that you mean to sting. The woman nodded slowly, unbothered, and kept looking. Marcus muttered something again. Priya laughed, quiet but not quiet enough. Nadia set down the sweater she was folding. She walked across the floor, not because anyone asked her to, not because it was her section, but because the look on the old woman's face, that steady, undefended look of someone choosing not to react, was one she recognized. It was the look of someone who had been made to feel small so many times that they'd stopped explaining themselves. "Hi," Nadia said, coming to stand beside her. "Are you looking for anything in particular, or just having a look?" The woman glanced at her with something careful in her expression, like she was deciding how much to trust the question. "Just looking," she said. "I used to know someone who wore a watch like that one." She pointed through the glass at a simple silver watch, no diamonds, clean face. "A long time ago." "It's a nice one," Nadia said. And then, because the woman had been standing for a while and the lobby had the particular chill that marble floors and high ceilings tend to hold, she said, "Can I get you some water? Or tea? We keep a kettle in the back." The woman looked at her for a moment. "That's very kind," she said finally. "Tea would be wonderful." Nadia went to the back, made the tea in the small staff kitchen, a real cup, not a paper one, and brought it out with a sleeve of biscuits someone had left on the counter. She set it on the edge of the display case and stood nearby while the woman wrapped both hands around the cup. They talked for maybe 7 minutes. The woman's name was. She gave it simply, without ceremony, Agatha. She was visiting the hotel to see a friend who was staying there. She'd come from a small town outside of Sudbury, Ontario, which she described with the particular fondness of someone who had been told 100 times they should want something bigger and had decided they didn't. Nadia was in the middle of asking about the town when she heard Bridget's voice behind her. "Nadia." She turned. Bridget was standing by the entrance to the back hallway, holding her clipboard, expression arranged into the specific blankness of someone who has already made a decision and is going through the motions of a conversation. "My office. When you're done." Nadia glanced at Agatha, who met her eyes with a look that said she understood exactly what was happening. "Go," Agatha said quietly. "Thank you for the tea." Nadia went. Bridget's office was small and beige, with a motivational print on the wall that said excellence is a habit, which Nadia had always found vaguely threatening. "Close the door," Bridget said. Nadia closed the door. "I need to talk to you about what just happened on the floor. I made a guest a cup of tea." "She wasn't a guest. She was." Bridget paused, looking for the word. "She was a visitor, and the way you engaged with her in front of actual clientele is not aligned with the image we're maintaining here." Nadia felt something in her chest go very still. She was cold. "I gave her tea." "You also gave her money. I saw it on the security feed this morning." Bridget looked at her over the clipboard. "You handed her cash in our lobby, Nadia. In front of the display cases. I gave her $20 last week outside the hotel. She was." "I don't need the context. What I need is for you to understand that your behavior reflects on this space, on this brand, and on me." Bridget set the clipboard down. "We've had conversations before about your approach with certain customers." She wasn't even a customer, exactly. The word landed like a period at the end of a sentence that had already been written. Nadia stood there and felt the very particular humiliation of being told that a kindness was a liability. She had known this moment was a possibility, had sensed it the way you sense a storm before the clouds actually show up. But knowing something is coming doesn't make it softer when it arrives. "I'm going to have to let you go," Bridget said. "Effect today." There was a pause. "You're firing me," Nadia said, "for making someone tea. I'm letting you go for a pattern of behavior that isn't a fit for this environment. I gave a woman tea and $20 out of my own pocket. That's the pattern." Bridget looked at her with the expression of someone who had decided not to feel guilty about this. "You'll receive 2 weeks' pay. I'll need your lanyard." Nadia unpinned her lanyard. She set it on the desk with more care than she felt like using. She picked up her bag from the coat hook behind the door. She walked out of the office, through the floor, past Priya, who looked away, past Marcus, who looked at his phone, and out through the lobby doors into the November afternoon. The cold hit her face. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment and just breathed. She didn't cry. She was surprised by that. What she felt instead was a kind of hollow ringing, like a bell that had just been struck and wasn't done vibrating yet. She walked to the bus stop, sat down on the bench, and stared at the street. $20, she thought. I lost a job over $20 and a cup of tea. She almost laughed. It came out more like a breath. That weekend was hard in the specific way that weekends are hard when you've lost something, and the world doesn't stop to notice. Nadia applied for 3 positions online, and cleaned her apartment twice, and called her sister in Halifax, who said, "That's awful," in the right tone, and then asked if she was okay, which she was. mostly except for the part where she kept doing the math of how many weeks of savings she had left. 6, if she was careful. Maybe 7. She updated her resume. She made a list of places to follow up. She went to bed Sunday night feeling tired in a way that had nothing to do with the amount of sleep she'd gotten. Monday morning she got a phone call from a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer it. Is this Nadia Ose? The voice was a man's, low, unhurried, with the particular quality of someone who had been in enough rooms that they had stopped being nervous in them. Yes, she said. My name is Thomas Whitmore. I think you may have met my mother last week. At the Harlow and Reed gift shop. Nadia went very still. Agatha, she said. Yes. A pause. She mentioned you. She mentioned you specifically, that you brought her tea when she was cold, and that you spoke with her like she was worth talking to. Those were her words. Nadia sat down on the edge of her bed, not entirely sure her legs were going to keep cooperating. I'm sorry, she said, because she didn't have anything better yet. She told me what happened afterward as well, Thomas said. That you lost your position. Nadia didn't say anything. I own Whitmore Group, he said. We're a hospitality and property development company. We have 12 hotels across Canada and 4 in the US. Harlow and Reed is one of our properties. The ringing in Nadia's ears became something different. Not hollow this time. Just, very present. My mother had been doing what she does twice a year, Thomas continued. She visits our properties without announcing herself, dressed as she likes to dress, and she watches how the staff treat people they think don't matter. She's been doing it since before I took over the company. She says it's the most accurate performance review possible. Nadia sat with that for a moment. She did this on purpose, Nadia said slowly. She did not arrange for you to help her, Thomas said. She can't control that. What she can tell me is how she was treated. And what she told me about you was… He paused. It was notable. What about the others? A brief silence. The manager who dismissed you has been let go. The other 2 employees involved are being reviewed. Nadia stared at the wall of her bedroom. There was a small print there that her friend Halima had given her. A bird on a branch, simple, green. I'd like to offer you a position, Thomas said. Not in the gift shop. We have a guest experience coordinator role opening at our flagship location downtown. It's not a minor position. It involves team oversight, direct reporting to the general manager, and a salary that's considerably better than what you were earning. Why? Nadia said, before she could stop herself. Another pause. This one was different from the others, warmer, somehow. Because my mother is a good judge of people, he said, and because the staff who treated her like she was invisible are the exact reason we have this review process. I'd rather find people like you before they get filtered out by people like them. Nadia looked at the bird on the branch. Can I have a few days? She said. Of course. She said she'd be in touch, thanked him, and hung up. Then she sat on the edge of her bed for a very long time without moving. She thought about Agatha, the way she'd held the teacup in both hands, the specific calm of someone who had learned to be unbothered by small cruelties. She thought about the silver watch behind the glass, and the person Agatha had said used to wear one like it, a long time ago. She thought about the $20, which at the time had felt like the only thing she had to give, and which she would have given again without question. She hadn't helped Agatha because she thought it would lead somewhere. She'd helped her because the morning was cold, and the woman looked tired and there was tea available. That was the whole of it. She reached for her phone and drafted a reply to one of the job applications she'd sent over the weekend. Then she stopped, read it over, deleted it. She thought about the guest experience coordinator role. She thought about what team oversight meant and whether she was ready for it, and then decided that readiness was something you often discovered after the fact. She called Thomas Whitmore back the next morning. The Whitmore flagship was a different world from Harlow and Reed. Not just in scale, which was considerable, but in atmosphere. The lobby had the feeling of a place that took itself seriously without needing to perform it. The staff moved like people who knew what they were doing and didn't need to signal it constantly. Nadia's first week was intense in the good way, the way that leaves you tired but not emptied. Her manager, a steady woman named Gwen, handed her a thick orientation package on day 1 and said, "Read it, but also don't let it replace your instincts. Your instincts are why you're here." Nadia read it anyway, cover to cover, and then trusted her instincts on top of it. the role was more nuanced than she'd expected. She was responsible for the experience of guests from the moment they arrived to the moment they left, coordinating between front desk, housekeeping, the restaurant, the concierge team. It required her to hold a lot of things in her head at once, and to notice when something was about to go wrong before it did. She found she was good at it in ways she hadn't fully known before. She was 6 weeks in when Agatha came back. Nadia was crossing the lobby with a folder of supplier notes when she saw her. Same olive coat, same white sneakers, standing in the entrance and looking around with that same quiet attentiveness. Except this time, she wasn't invisible. 3 different staff members had already noticed her, and one was already moving toward her to help. Agatha's eyes found Nadia across the lobby and she smiled. Small, real, the kind of smile that doesn't perform itself. Nadia walked over. "You came back," Nadia said. "I had a meeting," Agatha said simply. "And then, you look well." I think. "Good." Agatha looked around the lobby. "Thomas showed me the role he offered you. Guest experience. That's exactly right for you. Did you tell him to hire me?" Agatha looked at her with an expression that was almost amused. "I told him the truth. He made his own decision." She paused. "I don't make his decisions for him. I never have. But he listens to me when I tell him what I've seen." Nadia thought about that. "Can I get you some tea?" she said. Agatha laughed. A real laugh, warm, short. "I think I know where the kettle is now," she said. "But thank you." Thomas Whitmore was not what Nadia had constructed from the phone call. She had expected someone corporate in the way that meant polished and slightly unreachable. He was, in fact, direct and a little formal, but there was nothing unreachable about him. He had his mother's quality of paying attention, of actually looking at the person in front of him, instead of at the version of them he'd already decided on. They met formally for the first time at a staff briefing 3 months into her role. He shook her hand, said her name, and moved on. Professional, appropriate. The second time they had a real conversation was in the corridor outside the restaurant when a supplier situation had gone sideways, and Nadia had solved it in a way that had apparently been worth mentioning. He'd stopped her on her way out of a meeting. "Gwen told me how you handled the Belmore catering situation," he said. "It needed handling," Nadia said. "Most problems do," he said. "Not everyone handles them." She wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a philosophical observation. She said thank you and kept walking. She thought about it for the rest of the afternoon. The thing about building something new is that it requires you to stop spending energy maintaining the old story you had about yourself. For most of Nadia's adult life, she had been quietly competent in spaces that didn't quite fit her. She had done her job well and been passed over, been kind and had it held against her, been practical and mistaken for someone with low ambition. The Whitmore flagship was the first place where her instincts didn't feel like a liability. She reorganized the guest feedback system. She introduced a quiet protocol for identifying guests with accessibility needs before they had to ask. She trained 2 junior staff members in a way that made Gwen say, at her 4-month review, "You teach people to pay attention. That's not a common skill." Nadia had never thought of it as a skill. She thought of it as basic. But she was beginning to understand that basic, done well, was rarer than anyone liked to admit. She and Thomas started having real conversations in the way that happens in workplaces, when 2 people are both early risers, and the lobby coffee is better before 7 a.m. He asked about her background, where she'd studied, how she'd ended up in hospitality, whether she'd ever thought about the operations side. She asked about the company, about what it looked like in the early years, about what his mother had been like as a presence in those rooms. When the business was still new and fragile, he told her about a particular meeting, early on, where a potential investor had been dismissive of Agatha in front of the whole table, and how Agatha had simply waited until the man was done talking and then asked him a question. One question that had so thoroughly dismantled his argument that the room had gone quiet. "What did she ask?" Nadia said. Thomas thought about it. She asked him what he thought the staff in his best-performing hotel would say about him if no one was listening. Nadia held that for a moment. "He didn't invest," Thomas said. "I didn't think he would." He looked at her. Neither did she. She wasn't prepared for how it developed, which was slowly the way honest things tend to. There was no single moment. There was just a gradual accumulation of mornings and conversations, and the particular understanding that comes from watching someone do their work well and from being seen doing yours. Thomas asked her, once, why she had given his mother money that first day. I didn't give her money, Nadia said. I gave it before outside the hotel, a different day. She looked hungry and I had $20. That's not nothing, it was $20. To you at the time it probably was something, he said, and he said it simply, without sentiment. Maybe, she said. But I didn't think about that. I thought about the fact that I had it and she looked like she needed it. He didn't say anything for a moment. My mother has a thing she says, he said finally. She says the truest thing about a person is what they do when they don't expect it to matter. Nadia was quiet. She liked you from the first cup of tea, he said. Before any of this. 8 months after Nadia started at the Whitmore flagship, Thomas asked her to walk through a new property the company had recently acquired. A smaller boutique space in the annex that needed to be reimagined from the lobby up. He wanted her read on the guest experience before the renovation team came in. They walked through it together on a Saturday morning, both with coffee, the building empty and slightly echoing around them. She told him what she saw. He asked questions. She answered them and asked her own. On the walk back, he said, I want to move you into a broader role. Across 3 properties. It would mean more travel, more responsibility, a different kind of pressure. She looked at him. Are you offering me a promotion or warning me about one? He laughed. Not the polished laugh she'd learned to expect in professional settings, but a real one. Both, maybe. I'll think about it, she said. She took 2 days. She said yes on a Monday. What she didn't know, not yet, was that Thomas had been thinking about something else entirely, for longer than he'd said anything about it. In the particular way that people who are deliberate about most things in their lives are sometimes slow to say the one thing that costs them the most to get wrong. He said it 6 months later, on an evening in May, outside a restaurant on King Street, after a dinner that had started as a working dinner, and had gradually, over the course of 3 hours, stopped being one. He said it simply, without performance, the way he did most things. She said yes to that too. The wedding was small, a venue outside of Kingston that had been in Thomas's family for decades, 26 guests, Agatha in the front row in a dress that was not olive green. She had, for the occasion, worn deep blue. Halima came from Halifax. Nadia's sister came from Vancouver with her 2 kids who immediately ran to the edge of the property and had to be retrieved from a very interesting but structurally concerning wooden fence. Agatha held both of Nadia's hands before the ceremony and looked at her for a long moment. You know, she said, I've done this twice a year for 11 years, visited the properties, watched the rooms. She paused. You're the first person who ever made me tea. Nadia looked at her. Really? Most people don't notice a cold old woman. Agatha smiled. Some people see her, very few offer anything. Nadia thought about the lobby, the marble, the November cold, the cup with 2 hands around it. I just thought you looked cold, she said. I know, Agatha said. That's why I told Thomas. The year after the wedding, Nadia opened the Clearwater Apprenticeship Fund, a nonprofit she had been quietly planning for 8 months, the idea shaped by everything she'd learned about what it costs to be dismissed by the wrong room, and what it could mean to be found by the right one. It connected people in career transition, people who had been passed over, laid off, made to feel like liabilities, with paid training opportunities in hospitality, trades, and business operations. It wasn't large at first. It wasn't supposed to be. What it was honest, and that, Nadia had learned, was a place to start. She didn't think about the Harlow and Reed gift shop very often. When she did, it wasn't with bitterness, more with the strange gratitude you feel for a door that closed firmly enough that you had to find a different one. She had been fired for making someone tea. Everything else had followed from that.